Yo, what is going on, guys? Got a video here today titled Men Flip the Script as Women Spiral. Now, today's episode was sent to me by Matrix of Madness. I'm going to leave both the person who made the video and Matrix linked in the pinned comment, so make sure you go and subscribe to those guys. Without further ado, let's jump right in.
For attractive women, is this, like, how big of a concern is sexual harassment? Like, none of you guys are working with Harvey Weinstein out here, but is it actually common for attractive women to actually be harassed in the workplace?
I would say yes.
Really?
Yeah. But with a caveat that it depends on the woman's comfort level, because harassment is subjective. So, for example, if you're sending me explicit messages, like, yes, that's a clear delineation of sexual harassment. But my brother actually had an instance where he was pulled into an HR situation, and he had just put his hand on the back of his assistant and said, can you tell them that I need 5 more minutes, like, to go tell the new clients, like, just give me a second. And that
innocent,
innocent,
like, just
right?
like, hey,
yeah.
but...
So that was an incident. So I think it really just depends on what you deem sexual harassment, and I feel for guys sometimes, because how do you know where that line is? I don't know.
That is exactly right. That is why a lot of men are choosing not to interact with women in the workplace at all anymore. Dudes are not wanting to be left alone in the same room as women. We're not wanting to hire women as much and things like this, is because this woman right here is exactly right. What constitutes harassment is highly subjective. It is up to the woman. Okay, it might be an innocuous, innocent action, but to the woman, she might feel like something awful was happening, and before you know it, you're losing your job and things like this. And of course, guys, what determines whether or not it constitutes harassment is typically how attractive you are. Have you ever noticed how very attractive men will say the most outlandish crap and women won't care? But for the average guy, if he says something that's not socially acceptable, then all of a sudden she arcs up and she has an issue with it? That's because what constitutes harassment or things that are not right are basically determined by how attractive you are. Let's continue.
I don't know. That's subjective.
And when folks say things like, believe all women, I have a question. Why? Really, why? Because I am inclined to believe stories of sexual abuse. I really am. But when folks say believe all women, you can't believe all women any more than you can believe all men or believe any other group of people. And to suggest that women are inherently more believable than men is sexist. To say that men don't deserve the same due process as women is sexist. And I believe that men shouldn't act like pigs. I've been only advocating this since I was a teenager. I'm the only man in America who was a virgin until I was married and proud of it. I've been advocating for a higher standard of traditional behavior on the part of men, literally my entire public career. But that doesn't mean that you get to carve out a section of crimes that don't require evidence.
A twist of fate. Women are now facing the unintended consequences of the MeToo movement. And guess what? They have no one to blame but themselves. A forthcoming study in the journal Organizational Dynamics reveals how men's behavior toward their female colleagues has hilariously shifted since the movement gained momentum. Brace yourself. 27% of men now avoid one-on-one meetings with female coworkers. Yes, nearly a third of men are now terrified to be alone in a room with a woman. Who knew office...
It's not men being terrified, right? It's not like we're petrified. It's simply a logical decision that this is probably going to be a bad idea for you to do, right? Men understand that being alone with a woman in a room constitutes risk, especially if there are no cameras or anything like this, okay? Men understand risk, we assess it, and then we decide where we're going to go and what we're going to do. This isn't an issue of, oh, men are terrified of women and this and that. And it's not like every woman is going to accuse you of something. The problem is that women can. And in the court of public opinion these days, guys, you as a man are considered guilty even if there's no evidence. You can come out, guess what? You can come out and you can prove yourself innocent in the court of law these days, and you will still have huge swaths of society who will still think that you're guilty and that you're a predator and things like this, okay? So no, thank you. I will not be alone with a woman in a room, at least without security cameras, and I understand why men don't want to do this either.
Life could turn into a horror movie. But wait, there's more. A solid 21% of men admit they hesitate to hire women for positions involving close interaction, like business travel, and 19% confess they'd think twice about hiring an attractive woman. Sorry, ladies, it looks like being pretty is now a career liability. The research, conducted in early 2019 across various industries, shows a disturbing, and let's be honest, comically ironic, trend. In 2018, when HashmeToo was all the rage, 15% of men were reluctant to hire women for jobs requiring close interpersonal interactions. Fast forward to 2019, and that number had jumped to 21%.
You know what? I actually think it's going to be a lot higher these days, by the way. You know, dudes are a lot more aware of this. We see, chances are, if you're watching this video, guys, you probably know of some dude who's been dragged into a situation that he has, should honestly not be in, okay? A lot of people watching this right now, you'll have a friend, maybe even a relative who's been accused of something he didn't do. And of course, these things rarely work out well for men. So I completely understand why men are walking away from women, especially in a professional capacity, because all there really is there is risk. You know, why would you hire someone where all it takes is one HR trip and then all of a sudden your company's in a huge amount of trouble? There's so much drama, there's so much unnecessary garbage that's being brought to the table. Let's keep going.
So a paper came out recently that looked at the impact of the MeToo movement on academia, and it actually shows that post-MeToo, women's productivity fell largely due to fewer collaborations with male researchers. The paper shows that this drop is most pronounced at universities where the perceived risk of sexual harassment accusations is highest. So the actual findings comparing research before and after the movement are right here, and as you can see, after the MeToo movement, collaborations with male researchers inside the same institution fell to close to zero. The author points out that men feel like if they accidentally say the wrong thing, they could be canceled or fired. She also notes that institutions that have clear policies on sexual harassment help reduce this perceived risk. And this isn't just in academia.
Check that out, guys. 60% of, what was this? 60% of male managers are not interested. You know, they're concerned about having one-on-one interactions, I believe it was, with women. And I certainly do not blame these men. Now, what's interesting about this, by the way, is that men are more hesitant these days to work with women. You know, the collaborations have gone down, and for some reason, the women's productivity has significantly fell when they were unable to collaborate with the men. That's an interesting revelation there, isn't it? It kind of suggests that the women aren't necessarily pulling their weight in these situations in the first place. Again, guys, you know, we have laws against this. You're supposed to not discriminate when you hire people. But of course, everybody knows that workplaces do this anyway. I think that you can certainly get in trouble for this. But places certainly do this. You know, you go into, for example, airlines, and the stewardesses are typically going to be women. You know, there are places where discrimination occurs. So let's keep going.
The paper also cites a 2018 study which showed that 60% of male managers are uncomfortable participating in common activities with women due to the same concerns. And a curious finding of the study was that men make up for the loss in this collaboration by just collaborating more with other men, whereas women don't make up for it at all. The author concludes her findings by saying that MeToo was important for raising awareness, but it's also increasingly important for institutions to have really clear sexual harassment guidelines.
Yeah, guys, I can't wait to be educated even more as a man, because I don't understand what constitutes, you know, harassment and things like this. I really dislike, you know, we've seen a lot of initiatives these days in education, in workplaces and stuff like this to teach the men. No, thank you. You know, I'm just going to go somewhere else. I'm not some wild animal to be taught. I'm not inherently bad, okay? And this is what a lot of young men are being taught, excuse me, as they go into these education systems, right? They go into school, they're taught that they need certain kinds of education. They go into universities, which quite honestly, guys, are indoctrination camps these days outside of a few specific fields, and they're taught that they're dangerous and that they're responsible for things that happened many years ago and so on and so forth, okay? So don't be surprised when men decide to opt out of society. They decide to opt out of your game. They don't want to work in your workplaces anymore. They don't want to hire you. And quite honestly, they've had enough, okay? Because what happens is if you sit here and you wag your finger at men and go, we need to re-educate you, a lot of guys are going to say, okay, goodbye, I'm leaving. I wasn't the problem anyway. How about you re-educate yourself? You know? And again, I don't blame dudes for walking away from these places.
The MeToo movement has become big enough to encompass everything and diffuse enough to risk becoming nothing at all. As it descends the ladder from rape to bad dates, it's becoming a category big enough to be meaningless. 4 months ago, we learned the shocking news about Harvey Weinstein. Soon after, we heard about more monsters in everyday places. The MeToo hashtag took off and a movement was formed. More women came forward, more powerful men were fired. But just as quickly, some men were unfairly caught in the crossfire. Matt Damon said that groping someone's butt was different from sexually molesting a child. The mob said he was callous, misinformed, and part of the problem. An anonymous woman described a disappointing date with Aziz Ansari, and suddenly, bad hookups were added to the list. Some women said the problem was the male power structure itself, and soon smashing the patriarchy was added to the long list of goals.
Ah, yes, the male power structure, guys, that has provided and protected women for a very, very long time. Of course, provided for, excuse me, is of course the issue. Down with the patriarchy. You know what? I agree. Down with the patriarchy. Let the women run the workplaces. Let the women do all of the hard, difficult jobs. Let's see how that pans out. Let society fall. Who gives a damn? You don't want the men there anyway. All of these patriarchal systems, they're just oppressing you. Okay, how about you go out there and you do the plumbing? Not my problem. Because what's going to happen, guys, is society is going to collapse. If enough men walk away, all of the people, for example, I don't know, doing the critical infrastructure, then, you know, good luck running your society. Good luck with that one. I think governments these days do a very, very poor job at encouraging men to participate in society, right? Let's just map out the average man's life, okay, these days, right? Out of school, that is. You go out there, you join the workforce, you work your 9 to 5, you try and save up money as best as you possibly can, being taxed a ridiculous amount all the while. Inflation is absolutely nuts. You're never going to be able to afford a home. You might pay it off in like 40 years. Have fun with that. So you're working your 9 to 5. You're paying off your house that the bank owns that you don't even own for many years. Inflation is going up the whole damn time. And then maybe you get a girlfriend, okay? And we all know how Western women are these days. Have fun with that. So you're risking your house to do that. You're risking any potential kids you have to do that. The odds of you being cheated on are incredibly high. The odds of you being divorced are incredibly high. Need I go on? And then you've got the education systems themselves. You've got the workplaces themselves. You've got the work itself. I mean, all the while, by the way, guys, again, being taxed the whole damn time, a stupid amount. Oh yeah, by the way, your money is being spent on things that you probably don't even agree with, being sent over to countries that you don't even like. So yeah, you know, having a hard time selling this whole participate in society thing to men.
It seemed that almost every woman had some kind of experience or goal that she wanted to add to the agenda. No problem was too small or too vague to be included, so long as a man was to blame. The women's movement in America began at the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848, and it also included a long list of goals. Soon enough, leaders focused on one goal: suffrage. It was a reckoning, a watershed moment, and it changed the country forever. If MeToo is going to change America, it needs to focus on its original and most serious goal: ending the kind of workplace sexual harassment that has plagued women ever since they entered the workforce.
Why don't we talk about, by the way, the women who are harassing men? Why don't we talk about the women who are lying about men? I know plenty of dudes in workplaces that have been harassed and things like this, but we don't ever talk about that. No, it's just about the women suffering, right? We don't, for example, you know, we talk about all these powerful dudes in positions taking advantage of women, these evil men, which granted, there are a few evil men. I'll give you that. But, you know, when do we have discussions about, for example, I don't know, the female school teachers who are doing terrible things with children? We don't see that blasting the news, do we? We never see discussions about that. So, you know, this situation is absolutely insane to me, the way it's being portrayed in modern day media, guys. Yes, believe all women, no evidence needed, etc., etc. Carry on.
It went from a supportive movement to a full-blown witch hunt. Really disappointing. And yet, when men take steps to ensure they don't harass women, they get criticized. Wonder why? Oh wait, they want certain men to stick around, but even those guys are hightailing it out of there. There was a woman who published a blog post about quitting her job because she was being harassed. But reading her story, it turns out the harassment was a guy sending her an email asking her out on a date. She said she felt pressured and quit. She even posted the full email, which was just him asking if she was single and if she'd like to grab coffee.
Have you guys noticed that some of my videos have gone missing over here on YouTube? That is because I am slowly moving them over to locals where I can actually host them without the risk of getting in trouble. If you are not aware, many creators are starting to move over to places like locals, Rumble, etc. because YouTube is not really a free speech platform. So if you are interested in supporting the channel and getting access to videos that are no longer available here, make sure that you come and join us over on Locals. The link will be in the video description down below. Supporters get access to their own exclusive videos that are no longer available to the public. So make sure you go to the link in the description and join us over there now. But anyway, guys, back to today's episode.
Not the smoothest move, sure, but does it really warrant blasting him on the company-wide network? Seems like a huge overreaction.
And these are the same women, by the way, that want men to plan dates and want men to ask them out. There are literally many, many men out there who they go and ask a woman out, and then what happens is they get publicly humiliated for doing it. Like, please make that make sense to me. You've got women on the one hand saying, we want men to take charge, we want men to lead us. But at the same time, we're going to publicly humiliate the ones that we don't want, and we're also going to scream down with the patriarchy at the same time. So which exactly is it? I've noticed that a lot of women, they really want conservative behaviors out of men, but they don't want to be conservative. They don't want the men to actually be conservative, which is interesting, and they don't want to be conservative themselves or traditional. So we want the traditional behaviors from men, but we don't want to be a traditional woman. I see.
So there you have it.
But tonight, one retired CEO is speaking out about why he thinks this might end up having the wrong effect on women in the workforce.
Steve, Tricia, well, this new wave of women standing up against sexual misconduct has led to all sorts of changes. But tonight, one CEO believes it may be preventing women from getting the jobs they want.
From the entertainment industry to the gaming world, women everywhere are standing up against sexual misconduct in the workplace.
It's a new day. It is the era of the woman now.
The latest case has brought this movement right to the Las Vegas Strip. Casino mogul Steve Wynn stepping down as CEO yesterday after allegations he sexually assaulted employees. But is time really up?
I have a big concern. And it's what's going to happen in hiring going forward.
Mark Yosoloff is the director of UNLV's School of Gaming and Innovation and hired hundreds of men and women as former CEO of Shufflemaster. He says this movement will make it tougher for women to get hired, especially when they're up against a qualified man.
They might elect to hire the man because they are concerned that down the road, whether they do anything wrong or not, there might be a she said, he said.
Yosoloff says current CEOs he knows have already opted not to sit in meetings alone with women in fear they would do something to spark a complaint.
It's a craziness that no executive wants to have to face.
We've actually covered this guy in a recent episode, guys, and I totally agree with him. No executive wants to face these sorts of decisions. You know, these business owners and things like this, they don't want to hire women these days because they don't want the drama and the headache that comes along with doing it. All it takes is one bad HR situation, and then all of a sudden your company is in the dirt. You know, you might have to resign, even because the thing is, right, is even if you're not guilty, it doesn't matter. Because people consider you guilty anyway, guys, you know? You approach, for example, a woman at the gym, she calls you a creep one time, and now all of a sudden you're a creep you're that creepy guy at the gym. You know what I'm saying? This is why, for example, guys, I've made this point many times, okay? But if I go into the gym, for example, late at night, I'm not helping women out with their form, I'm not talking to them, I'm not striking up conversation, because I refuse to potentially be that guy, right? Does that mean I dislike women? Apparently it does, you know? People will say you dislike women if you do this, or that you're a mean and awful person, but at the end of the day, it's just self-preservation. I don't have anything against these particular individuals. Like I said, not every woman's going to accuse you. It's just the problem that every woman can, and once you're accused, you're basically permanently labeled as that thing.
Many people, including myself, only became aware of the MeToo movement in 2017 when Rose McGowan, a white wealthy woman who was a famous actress, brought it up. But it was actually started all the way back in 2006 by Tarana Burke, an African-American social activist. Women of color have been speaking up about sexual abuse in low-income workspaces for ages, but they never garnered the same attention as a rich white actress.
There's been some backlash about Me Too and some anxiety, as you might imagine.
Many male managers and owners are feeling a little bit more tentative when working with and managing their female workers.
Listen to this. A side result, an unintended consequence of the Me Too movement has popped up. Male executives and managers, some are now saying they are afraid to work with and mentor female colleagues in the workplace. So we're trying to find out, is it too hard to see the difference between mentoring and harassment?
Listen, I can't give any more information. But I fear I may have girl bossed a bit too close to the sun.
A large percentage of male managers were concerned about working with women one-on-one in the workplace. They were concerned about mentoring women. They were saying they were afraid to have meetings with women, to travel with women, and so on. It indicates that there are anxieties and fears that we need to address.
You know what? I think this is a very good repercussion, right? And it makes a lot of sense to me, okay? When you start to say things like, well, I'm going to accuse a man, and if I accuse a man, then you have to believe me straight away with no evidence. What's going to happen, foreseeably, is that men are going to not want to interact with you, okay? So we had dudes who, they don't want to mentor women anymore. They don't want to have meetings with women, particularly one-on-one, I would imagine, like we mentioned earlier. And they don't want to travel with women. So this is also denying women opportunities, okay? Because the dudes who run the show, and let's cut the nonsense here, guys, okay? A lot of these successful companies, a lot of the places looking to hire, oftentimes these are men who run these things. Now, not all the time. Okay, there are women who certainly run their own businesses and things like this. There are absolutely plenty of those. But certainly there are a lot of them, particularly successful ones as well, and very, very big companies that are often run by men. So what's going to happen is these dudes are not going to want to hire so many women these days anymore. And you know what? I'd actually argue that this might secretly flow on to the women who lead workspaces as well. Because what's going to happen, I think, is you'll have some of these women who recognize, hey, if I hire Stacy and I've already got Matt working for me, I'm concerned that Stacy might create some issues and things like this. So at the end of the day, women have done themselves a very large disservice by essentially running and talking smack about people that they had no business talking smack about. Because let's be honest, a lot of the times when they go and accuse these men have not necessarily done something wrong. Now, sometimes they have, granted, but the problem is there are so many women out there who are falsely accusing men that now this is being treated like a joke.
The movement meant to protect women has also turned men into cautious, second-guessing wrecks in professional settings, creating a new set of laughable challenges for women in the workplace. Who would have thought trying to navigate office politics could get even more awkward? The HashmeToo Movement, where every workplace interaction between men and women feels like an HR horror show just waiting to happen. Now, some men treat female colleagues like ticking time bombs, avoiding them like the plague for fear of being falsely accused of harassment.
You know, I had one friend, a friend of mine, and he was working in a very, very female-dominated area, and he had this exact same concern, and I don't blame him whatsoever. His workplace was absolutely dominated by women, and you know what? He let me tell you this, he never stuck around to have a chat with them. He never, you know, wanted to have any one-on-one time with them. He never met up with them outside of work. The man, what he would do is he would go to work, he would do his work, and he would leave. He wouldn't engage with them unless he had to, and he would keep it strictly professional and things like this. And this is what I think these men should be doing. Okay, like I totally understand why men have taken this course of action. Okay, it doesn't mean that you dislike women or that you're an awful person. Again, at the end of the day, it's just absolutely protecting yourself, because all it takes is one of those women to accuse you of something, and then all of a sudden you can't pay rent anymore, or maybe your company goes, you know, through a bunch of issues and things like this. So it makes total and utter sense to me, man.
Who needs mentorship and professional growth when you can just stick to your own gender bubble, right? And let's not forget the confusion. With the lines between appropriate and inappropriate behavior blurrier than ever, everyone's walking on eggshells, scared to say or do anything that could be misconstrued. Who knew workplace interactions could be this much fun? Welcome to the new era of professional relationships, where paranoia and awkwardness are the hot new trends.
Earlier this year, I had the displeasure of dealing with a female coworker harassing a male coworker. A male subordinate comes to me to report the female subordinate. She decided that she wanted his opinion on fellatio techniques. She asked him because he's openly gay. I went with him to HR to report. HR calls everyone involved to get their side. At this point, the female employee realizes the male employee snitched and begins bad-mouthing him. HR hands down punishment based on zero tolerance policy. 3 days unpaid suspension for the male victim, but only 1 day unpaid suspension to the female employee because she's pregnant and we can't cause too many problems. The male employee came back from suspension with legal representation. The female employee came back and all the male employees avoided her and any situation where they would need to be alone with a female employee.
And you know what? Rightfully so. How is it, by the way? We covered this situation recently as well. A lot of these channels, you know, they have bits and pieces from other channels, so I've seen some of these clips before. But this is interesting, right? So the female employee essentially harasses the dude, and then the dude gets in more trouble than she did, if I'm reading that correctly. It's absolutely insane, guys. You know, it's no wonder. And again, by the way, when this typically happens, when the women are doing the harassment, usually it doesn't result in anything, by the way. I think in this particular situation it did, and obviously everybody avoided her. But of course, you know, we don't normally talk about the situations where the women are doing things wrong, right? It's all about women need to speak up about these issues, etc., etc. But guys, we're going to be leaving today's episode there. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and your comments. Make sure you guys take care of yourselves, and I'll be seeing you all in the next episode. Peace.